90 minutes of not so much entertainment in Rome yesterday. 90 minutes or less of more entertainment today on the Calcio Guys. Adriano, Gianni, I'm Nicholas. With Steve Sciavillo back on. It's been a while. Steve from Chiesa di Totti and Knicks and Picks podcast. I forgot to mention that on Twitter. So two places you can check him out at. But Steve, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me back on. I'm glad to come on and talk with you guys. Yeah, not the most exciting derby to talk about, but I'm sure we'll find some things to talk about with Roma. There's always something to talk about with Mourinho there. And you upset Nick by not tagging Kicks and Picks in the tweet. So always have to give Kicks and Picks a shout out.
Yeah, exactly. Did you have any? I gotta ask. Did you have any predictions for this derby before going in?
See, Nick felt like it was going to go over the 2.5 goal line, which is usually what they project. He thought that both teams kind of would throw caution to the wind because they didn't have much to lose. I kind of saw it more as what it turned out to be, which was they were going to play conservative, and then if someone scored early, maybe we'd get some goals. But unfortunately, it was lower than even I thought. I didn't think we'd get a 0-0. I thought we'd get at least a goal or two.
Well, I mean, we did get a goal early, but Cristante was offside. So, I mean, we could...
Yeah, I mean, what is Rick Karsdorp? Did he have 3 shots all season before this match, and he had 3 in the first 15 minutes?
I forgot he was still on the roster, Steve. I didn't even realize.
See, that should have been one of the picks. We were like, "What's the over on the shots attempted?"
Last time it was 0-0 in the Derby was April 2018, by the way. So over 5 years. But I think everyone was expecting somewhat of a draw. I think even on our Instagram account, I always post, the polls for predictions for the game. I even put a draw. So I think that was pretty much expected. I mean, both teams are similar, close enough in the standings this year. But besides the disallowed goal, what did you have to make of the game, Steve?
I think from a Roma perspective, I thought they played pretty well defensively. I was happy with the way they came out the first 15, 20 minutes because they kind of dictated play a little bit. We mentioned the Karsdorp shots. The Cristante put that rebound in offside. But Roma seemed to have a pretty good foothold early, and then it kind of just turned around where Lazio had it the rest of the first half, and Roma was playing more defensive. Kind of expected Mourinho to play a fairly compact defensive match and try to hit on the counterattack. You had Dybala and Lukaku back. So having only 1 shot on target, I think, was the most disappointing part of it, because when Rick Karsdorp gets your only shot on target in the first 10, 15 minutes of the match, you obviously didn't produce enough to kind of warrant a win. I don't think Lazio did enough to win either, although they came a little closer on that shot. I think it was Felipe Anderson curled it off the post. That was a close one. Alberto had a great chance that he put over the top, that he put himself in a great position. But, I mean, you look at the XG, I'm looking at SofaScore. Roma's XG was 0.44, Lazio's 0.41. Both teams with less than half a goal expected, kind of speaks to the way the match played out, which was, I think, looking at the table, right, both teams are like, we can't afford to lose this match. As great as it would be to win and kind of build that momentum, I think, going into the international break, I think they were both more a little bit worried about losing it than they were motivated to win it. And I think that happens a lot in derbies, especially when the two teams both are struggling, right? If one had come in, maybe in the top 4, maybe that team plays it more aggressively because they have kind of a little leeway for margin for error, so to speak. But I think with Roma sitting in 7th pre-match and Lazio 10th on just 17, 16 points, the margin for error wasn't there for both teams. But the disappointing part for me was heading into the match, Milan had dropped points. Napoli had dropped points. Atalanta had dropped points. Even Bologna, who was ahead of them in the table, had dropped points to Fiorentina. And Roma could have been as high as 5th after the match if they had pulled it out. But again, looking at the standings, they're only 3 points off of Napoli in 4th place. So I guess not the end of the world to get a point out of it. I think it would have been more demoralizing, so to speak, if they had lost this match, say on like a late goal or something.
Do you think probably the over defensive play by both teams was probably related to the comments or the little spat between Sarri and Mourinho pre-game, pre the Slavia Praha game where Sarri makes those comments, do you think maybe this time around, Sarri's like, okay, well, Mourinho could come back at me and bite me in the ass with this. Maybe I should probably play a bit more out of character.
It could be. I mean, I think from a Mourinho perspective, this has kind of been his MO since he's been in Rome. He knows he has to win defensively. there is more attacking talent on the team this year with Lukaku joining Dybala, and Dybala was back and fully fit. So you would hope for a little more of a push from Roma, which you didn't get. I think, Sadi, I think what they're having trouble with this year, and I haven't watched nearly as many Lazio matches as I have Roma matches, they're just not scoring this year. Like you expect a Sadi-led team to score. And the way Lazio has played, even before that under Inzaghi, 13 goals scored, 13 conceded is very surprising for me from a Lazio perspective. They had the second or third best defense in the league, I think, last year, but they were also scoring goals. Roma's issue was scoring goals for the past season, and maybe even then some going back to the season before, even when Tammy was in better form. They have 22 goals scored, Roma, but 7 of those came against Empoli, so it's kind of inflated a little bit from one match. So I think both teams have struggled at times to score goals, and I think both were just being cautious not to lose this match. And I'm curious to see what happens with Lazio, because, Chiro's scoring here and there, but not like he was in volumes. I think they do miss Milinkovic-Savic being able to score from the midfield, that threat that he, always provided them. And even I remember him scoring a nice header in a derby, like in the run of play. So I think they're missing that aspect of their attack. And I think they're, with Chiro getting older and not having that, and then Zaccagni being out yesterday, I think they're having trouble finding ways to really create those goals, especially against a team like Roma that wants to sit back and defend. But then again, from the Roma perspective, if you're going to play on the counterattack, you have to push a little bit more, I think, when you're countering. I didn't see enough going forward. Lukaku wasn't really involved enough. Dybala didn't have his best match. He even got pulled with about 10 minutes left, which is, when you're in a 0-0, you don't expect to see that too often. But I would have thought you would have seen a little bit more push from either Spinazzola or Karsdorp, maybe not to put yourself in a bad position getting back defensively, but I would have liked to see a little bit more going forward from them. They were playing three center backs, and then you have a double pivot of Cristante and Paredes playing fairly defensively. It didn't leave much going forward, even on the counterattack.
Is that like a disappointing thing? Because again, Steve, I love your point, because I was gonna mention it before, if you didn't, but both teams playing to not lose instead of to win. I really want to emphasize that point, because I think that's pretty much what we saw in this derby. And maybe it's just what it is for these two teams. The Roman teams this year haven't been what is maybe expected. Is not being able to, going off your point of the counterattack, if you want to play that game and not really producing anything, is that just players being off? Is that a tactics thing? Where do you kind of lie with all that?
I think it's part the tactics. I think it's part the midfield absences too. Like Pellegrini didn't feature at all yesterday. He was come back from injury. I think he was honestly there more for moral support than anything. I know he's back in training, but he's only back for a day or two. Renato Sanchez, maybe bringing him on earlier might have been useful. I know he's only been back about a week from an injury, but maybe he's the guy that could have pushed the midfield forward a little bit more, driven the ball forward in the midfield, and freed up Dybala and Lukaku. I don't know. Spinazzola can do it, and most of the pressure went through the left side. Yes, I'm sure if we looked at heat maps, he'd be the one much higher up the pitch than Karsdorp for the most part. But I think they're almost a little too one-dimensional when they're on the counterattack, right? They don't have that option. If you had Sanchez or somebody to push the ball in the midfield, I think then maybe it frees up Spinazzola a little bit more on the left, and then you have that other option in the center. Karsdorp can push the ball himself. I don't know if he was instructed not to be so aggressive because they wanted to attack down their own left side. Lazio's right. I think Lazzati was playing on the right side over there. I don't know if that was intentional, but when you're playing 3 center backs, it doesn't leave you many options pushing forward if you're not controlling possession enough. I think it's part tactics, part players. It's kind of, when you have Lukaku and Dybala, though, I understood last year when Tammy was really struggling, it was hard to get things going on the counter. He's not a hold-up striker kind of player like Lukaku is, but you got to get him the ball more. I know he got the ball in space once or twice where he was able to really use his physicality. I thought going in, with Casale out, I thought the matchup with Patrick and Romagnoli, physically, he was, in a good position against those two players, because he is a load to try to stop if you're not a physical center back. So I think in part it's tactics, in part it's the players, but with that, bona fide striker this year, and no knock on Tammy, because 2 years ago he had a great year, but last year he really struggled. Having Lukaku in form, because he's been really good since he's come over, having Dybala back who can provide the ball for him, I would have expected a little more attacking impetus from this team this year than we've seen. And maybe it is the midfield injuries, because with Paredes, Cristante, and Bove, they're not like the attacking midfield types, right? We didn't see Aouar in this match. Sanchez very little. Like I said, Pellegrini, I guess not fit enough to even feature 10, 15 minutes. Maybe that changes the dynamic a little bit in the midfield and pushing forward on the counter or just trying to dictate possession. But yeah, it gets a little bit stale sometimes. It gets a little hard to watch. I know in the end, Roma ended up controlling 51-49 possession. I think that just speaks more to the match being one of those 50-50 matches where neither team really did enough to win.
Do you think maybe using an alternative option like El Shaarawy in the mid would have been a difference maker in this game itself? I felt like as if the game kind of lacked him a bit, especially how he is like, I know he's not a Romanista product or Roman product, but he's really involved with the team. He really loves the team and, you know, loves the city. And you think maybe, obviously, you know, you're playing in the Derby, you might have had that little bit of an extra drive. I know it's all hypothetical and it's kind of a weird question to ask, but do you think maybe like instead of looking for a pure midfielder, trying something out like that might have made a difference?
Yeah, it could have. Maybe you drop Dybala a little deeper to receive the ball, and he plays almost as the second striker, I think, is an option. I know he's played out wide in Spinazzola's spot when Spinazzola's been out, but I do think he gives a different element, right? He has that, he can kind of create his own shot at times. He's not a Roma product in terms of like youth academy, but he's been with the club so long now that early in his career, you would have associated him always with Milan, but now I think at this point in his career, you associate him with Roma. He had that little sojourn to China for the money or whatever it was for like 18 months, and he found his way back because he missed it. And I think that speaks to the attachment he now has with the club and with the city. I do think he could have played a role. We didn't see him at all. I mean, we didn't see Mourinho waited until, I'm going to double check, but it was the 82nd minute before he made his first subs, which was a little surprising to me. In some ways, because I'm like, you're sitting there and you're like, okay, maybe he's trying to, they're doing all right now. I mean, in the second half, they did have a little bit more possession. They had a little bit more going forward, but there still wasn't enough going forward. So he didn't really make a sub until Bove had that cramp. I think he had about a calf cramp when he reached for a ball in the box as he was trying to lay one off to Dybala. You saw Azmoun and Sanchez come on then for Dybala and Bove, and then it was just Celik and Christensen in the 86th and 90th minutes. Those guys aren't attacking options really, right? They're two fullbacks that haven't really done anything attacking this year. So to not bring in El Shaarawy, Belotti, even Aouar in the midfield, or even Zalewski as one of the wingbacks, I think spoke to, they got to the point where Mourinho, I think, was almost playing it conservative toward the end because he didn't throw on another attacking option or a midfielder who could attack other than the Sanchez move. So in that sense, I think even El Shaarawy off the bench for the last 15, 20, 25 minutes or something, maybe could have been like a little bit of a spark plug. When you're in a 0-0, I'm not saying to throw caution to the wind because you don't want to go and give up a goal the other way. But I think throwing on one or two guys who can maybe make a difference attacking could have been useful, at least to try to win the match late.
Before the match, there was a lot of talk between the two coaches. One giving a jab at the other, and the other one coming back. Obviously Mourinho and Sarri, they're known to talk in the media. They're known to step up and take the heat for anything. What did you make of that? Do you think this was just classic Derby, or do you think this was a strategy pretty much on both sides to kind of just take some heat off the players?
I think a little bit from Sadi's point of view. He's the one who started it, right? Talking about, because Mourinho said something about the schedule having to play a Thursday and then a Sunday, and Sadi called it a friendly. And Mourinho said, well, that the reason I have 26 or whatever trophies it is because I don't take everything as a friendly, right? I don't take the Europa League as a friendly because it's a competition where I can win trophies, and Roma almost won it last year, right? And he didn't take the Conference League as a friendly, which a lot of people maybe early on wanted him to do and kind of toss that competition 2 years ago. So I think Mourinho had the perfect comeback, in my opinion. It's not just because I'm a Romanista. I just think if you're going to call things friendlies, then the guy who's got the trophies has a say there. But I do think it was Sadi trying to maybe take some of maybe play a little bit of those Derby mind games, right? And that was Mourinho coming back at him. At the end, they had a nice laugh and a handshake together. So I don't think there's any hard feelings. I think they both know the game. They both know how you play the game, right? And get your players motivated and maybe get in the other team's head a little bit. I don't think there's more to it than that. And Mourinho and Sadi, like you said, they both like to take a nice little jab in the press and kind of stir the pot a bit, so to speak.
They respect each other. I saw another quote, saying, I don't know, I think it was Sadi or was it Mourinho? I don't remember which one it was, saying that the other one's just a ball buster, but obviously there's mutual respect there, right? So, love them or hate them, I think that I like that, there is that respect there. And like, they didn't really, obviously they've been outlandish in the media before. I don't know if that'll ever go away for these two types of coaches, especially Mourinho. But I kind of like that they kind of came to a medium ground, like a middle ground, and respect each other and not didn't make it more than what it really should have been. What should have been is a better performance on the pitch. At least in my eyes. So it's unfortunate we didn't see that. I feel like it. I don't know. I feel like these Roman derbies lately haven't been what they should have been. Steve, I don't know if that is fair to say, because I don't remember the last one that was really like, you wake up and it's like, okay, I'm going to watch this derby and it's going to be like action packed, So I don't know if I'm wrong saying that, but you can definitely correct me if I'm wrong. But
the last three, 0-0 last year was 1-0 each time for Lazio. In the 2021-2022 season, Roma won the second one 3-0. Before that, in September 2021, it was 3-2 Lazio. So that's probably the last good game.
Yeah, and I agree. Like I always get up for the derby, right? As a fan of a team, if you have a derby match, you're going to get up for it. But this was
for sure
probably the least excited I've been for a derby, and I've been following Roma now for close to 20 years, right? And as a derby, and say 15 in terms of being like a true diehard fan, right? The first couple of years I was just getting into it, but every time the derby, especially because my buddy Nick is a Lazio fan, right? You always want to have the little bit of bragging rights. I said to him before the match, I was talking to him on Friday or Saturday, I was like, this is the least excited I've been for a derby. I don't know if it's because they're both not playing well this year. Maybe like it just doesn't. I just kind of felt it might go this way after last year. I don't know what it is, because almost every other one you're excited for, and this is kind of like, I don't know what we're going to get out of these two teams. I think that maybe had a lot to do with it. And also, like Nick just mentioned, like Mourinho was 1-3 against Sadi coming into this derby, right? In terms of the Roman derbies, I almost wanted him to put a little more, not. I don't want to say they didn't put effort into it, but maybe a little more attacking, effort into it to try to like break that streak, because if they had lost a third in a row to Lazio, like that doesn't happen too often. Like you don't want that to happen. Last year, so they've been shut out in 3 straight derbies. That to me, that's not good enough.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.